This hangout on air is live. Well, what do you know? I should
I
have
still
asked you.
have I still have you as listed as off air.
Oh, really? Because
Yeah.
according to this, we're.
Up there we go. Came up.
Uh, is my window too?
Yeah,
Is
there's
this?
a lot of backlight.
Yeah. There's not. I don't know what I can do about that other than sit in front of it.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. All
Gives
right.
you a kind of halo though.
I know. I was just watching Geddy Lee. Uh, he was talking about when he first started playing, and what he said basically was he was living this humdrum existence, which in a suburbs where he just didn't fit in, and finally he learned guitar, and that was a great way to you know win friends and influence people. And I was thinking how every kid of that age, middle school, high school, has to has to find some outlet. With some kids, it's sports. You know, uh, it with some, it's having a huge clique or group of friends to run with, and with some, it's performance. You've got to have that moment in the sun. You've got to have that crossing the goal line for a touchdown, standing in the spotlight and playing that piece perfectly moment. It's got to happen. Otherwise, I think you're in a lot of trouble.
Well, I have seen that. I have seen the people who haven't done that. And they get to my stage of life and they're very discontent.
Mm. So there's truth in what I say.
Yeah. Have you seen the documentary on Rush called Beyond the Gilded Stage?
Yes.
It's fabulous. I would be interested in seeing him interviewed with regard to his bass technique. Do you know of anybody who plays bass with one finger back and forth?
No.
I've never seen that before, but that's what he does. He developed his own idiosyncratic technique.
There's no one quite like Geddy Lee when it comes to bass.
Yeah,
I can't think of anyone in or out of the genre.
yeah. Well, all three of them. The situation you described in his youth is consistent with the three of them.
That's right.
They
Uh,
all say the same thing.
that's right. Neil Peart, Alex Lifeson,
Hmm.
they uh, they all have similar backgrounds. That's what I think brought them together in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. Wouldn't you have loved to have been at that audition for Peart?
Of course, love to have been there for any of it.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty cool.
There's very little, I guess what you'd call studio footage. There's some in the video for Fly By Night, I
Hmm.
think. No, not Fly By. The one of the videos has some studio footage in it. I can't recall which one right now off the top of my head, but that's as close as I think you ever get to Rush in the studio. There's none in the documentary that I
Yeah,
can
oh yeah,
recall. Oh, there
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. There are three or four, but the short vignettes, just short uh, cuts of them in the middle of what they were doing. You never see anything extensive. But
Right. You know, there's a lot of footage, you can find it online, of the Beatles in the studio.
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, there is. There's tons of it. Tons of it. Every album, there's some film, somebody filmed it. One of the biggest mistakes that McCartney ever made was taking the group out of um, Abbey Road and moving them to Twickenham for the filming of the Let It Be album.
I didn't know that.
He wanted to, it was originally called the Get Back Project, and he wanted to bring the group back to being more a unit, the same thing that he tried when they did Sgt. Pepper. And he said, let's be this other band. We can just do whatever we want and it won't matter because we're not the Beatles. We're this other entity. So he wanted to, and ever since they stopped touring in '66, and then Epstein died. So they were lost. They kind of lost their direction. So McCartney had this brilliant idea that they could get back to where they once was before. And he thought that making a film project of the whole circumstance would be a great idea. So he moved the Beatles to Twickenham Studios, which is really not a music studio. It's more of a film studio in the north, and it was just this huge room where they would sit in a circle a lot of times, trying to get the songs down. And with the Beatles, I mean, it was whoever wrote the song would bring it to the rest of them and tell them how to play it and basically direct them. By then, each one wanted to do his own thing, except for Ringo. But George more and more wanted his own music involved. He wanted more than one song per side of the album. And tensions were starting to build. So taking them out of Abbey Road would probably be the worst thing you can do. So they're in this film studio, which is basically just a big cavernous space with two guys filming them constantly, and the sound guys are constantly saying things like camera B, 226, take one, things to keep the audio in sync with the video. So it was completely non-conducive to a good creative environment. And if I think if Lennon was sober, he would have quit. But it turns out that George was the one who quit. He quit over a weekend and came back. And McCartney, I think, knew then that he had made a mistake. He couldn't admit it. But then, of course, all that was left was, Yoko's constant presence and the fact that McCartney wanted one guy to manage them, and they wanted somebody else. The other three wanted somebody else, and there you had the breakup of the Beatles. So I think it all started with moving them to Twickenham.
Oh, how interesting.
But my original point was why there's so much footage of them recording, and also so many bootlegs. There's like several different versions of a lot of the Beatles music, is because they're like the only group who had the money and the clout to actually use a working studio as a rehearsal space.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So they could just go to Abbey Road Studio 2 and, run tape over everything and just tape everything. That's why there's so much bootleg material. That's why there's so little of some other groups. It's much more rare to find bootleg material of other bands.
Hmm.
If that makes any sense.
I got to check that out. I never knew that, so I don't really recall seeing any footage of the Beatles recording.
Oh yeah.
There is in the Moog library. There's a photo of Ringo and Paul, I think, playing with a modular Moog, but that's I think the only thing I ever saw. 5 or 6 years ago, PBS was playing a Paul McCartney concert in that studio, a large studio at Abbey Road, And he had vintage equipment, vintage recording equipment, a vintage uh, Mellotron.
Right.
And he demonstrated how some of the tunes had been layered and overdubbed. It was really interesting.
Yeah. I saw that. I saw that video.
I like his demonstration of the Mellotron for what its original purpose was, for playing loops.
Yes.
So you could do an arrangement, like a band arrangement.
Mhm. It was a good idea for the technology of the time, I think.
Well, yeah, it would make sense because people weren't thinking of sampling instruments. They were thinking of sampling uh, segments of music.
Right. Well, you didn't have digital music. You didn't have digitization. You didn't have
Yeah,
computers. You didn't, you know, all you had was tape. And what's the best way to use tape to get something like that
take a
done? Is,
loop. Yeah,
yeah, put it in a huge loop, and
yeah.
you build the instrument around the tape loops.
In 1977, I was at Rutgers um, in the courtyard of Livingston campus. There was a concert of um, new music or contemporary music, uh, and I did a tape loop that was about maybe a total of 120 feet. And I had microphone stands set up around the courtyard, and I ran the tape all around the microphone stands and back to itself. So there was a huge delay. And I did a piece called Bass Bells, where I recorded overtones, just overtones on the bass, and then slowed it down a couple of times. So these big booming bass bells, and I played a solo over it.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, it got a good response.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It's right out of Pink Floyd. I mean, Pink Floyd, while the Beatles were Sergeant Pepper's, I no, the White Album or
Uh,
something like that. In the other studio, Pink Floyd was doing tape loops around the studio and
yeah.
in
Well,
the
the
building.
Beatles did a lot of work with tape loops. I mean, look at Tomorrow Never Knows, for
Hmm.
example.
Well, that was McCartney's thing, right? I mean,
Oh
he
yeah.
was doing all that stuff.
Hmm. He started to think outside the box. He was an avant-garde. He was a lover of avant-garde music, music concrete and
Hmm.
electronic music, and he loved that stuff. And although that became Lennon's song, it was his idea. He just brought in a whole bunch of these little pieces of tape that he had, and they added them to the song. I mean, once I dropped the needle on that record, you know, that was it. My life changed.
Sergeant Pepper,
No,
the White Album,
Revolver,
a Revolver,
Revolver.
Revolver. Yeah,
Yeah, that was the first Beatles record I ever heard.
yeah,
It belonged to my mom.
yeah. I didn't pay much attention to that, but when I started, you remember you had suggested I read that Beatles as Musicians, I think is the title of the book.
Yeah.
And I went through the Revolver album as the first. I think that's where it started, actually. There's two volumes. One goes up to Revolver and then Revolver onward.
Mm,
So I
yeah.
started with Revolver, which I was not really familiar with. I had not really listened to it before. But I can see what the author means when he says there's a change there. That's where the change took place. Change in
Yeah.
direction.
If you wanted to pinpoint the exact moment of change, you could probably put it uh, at Revolver. Some people say it happened as early as Rubber Soul. Some people say it happened as late as Sergeant Pepper's, but I think Revolver's probably the crux, the corner.
Yeah, yeah,
They had stopped. They had stopped touring, performing live. Try and get away with that today, and try and make any money or do anything. It's so funny to think about if you're not touring, if you're not performing live. You can release as many records as you want, but there's really no way to be a working musician now. They did just the opposite, touring like mad and then just stopping cold. And do you know the reason why they stopped?
I don't know their reason. I had always assumed there was no sense in playing the music because nobody could hear it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
Basically.
yeah.
Also, it became very dangerous.
I'll bet. Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, it became very dangerous for them. They just couldn't keep them safe as much as they moved them into stadiums away from the crowd. Anytime they came in contact with a crowd of people, it was pandemonium. So
Yeah.
there's a
Um,
great shot once of Lennon performing on stage, and this guy just runs right up to him. I mean, you have that up till today too, but this guy could have been he could have been anybody, and he walked up to him just like he was standing at a cocktail party, but yet he's there performing. I've been in that situation too. You're on stage and people don't realize that you're actually performing, that there's a performance going on. They want to like be your pal or buy you a drink or shake your hand. No, man, I'm like playing here. I've got a job, a job to do. Dude, just listen to the music. Everything will be fine.
you know the Blues Brothers scene where they're playing in the saloon and they start throwing beer bottles and stuff.
Oh yeah,
I
oh
played a
yeah,
few of those.
oh boy.
You're trying to concentrate on the music and dodging too.
Yeah, my friend John just mentioned that the other day. Uh, I think in reference to a gig that we did, and he said at least the Blues Brothers had chicken wire.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times though.
I had read. I trying to remember what I read or heard Neil Morse say. Morse and those Portnoy and those guys are touring all the time. They have several different incarnations, and they tour a lot. The tours aren't long the way that they used to be in the days of the big, expensive rock bands, when they play smaller venues. But he said the reason for touring was different, and I'm trying to remember exactly. Obviously, you want to sell records, but I think in the old days, it didn't matter whether you made any money touring or not. The touring boosted sales of the records. And I think it's not that way now. I think they have to tour to supplement the what they make on the album sales.
Oh, absolutely. Without touring, they'd have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, and
Uh,
instead of lose these big, huge stadium shows that lose money, but make a big splash and call attention to your album, now they're playing smaller gigs that have a lower overhead and a higher profit.
they have to be very popular if they're going. The more popular they are, the more fans that they can sell tickets to, the
Right,
bigger their show can be.
right. Well, I've seen Dream Theater 3 or 4 times. That's a pretty well-known band, um, and they're they're playing the theater small arena circuit. They're not playing the big arenas or anything like that. Um, and that's a pretty big business, I guess. I get they're considered a pretty successful band. So I don't know. We just saw a video of Lady Antebellum the other night, a concert, and they're playing a large arena, 15,000 people. Um, who in rock music is playing large arenas now? I suppose if you get the Stones or the Who or somebody like that, you can. But what other bands do you know?
Oh, geez,
15, 20,000 people? Who does that anymore?
not that many, not that many. You know, yeah, no, I'm not sure who else could possibly afford to do something like that nowadays. I don't think anyone but the top bands can even afford to do. You know what? You know what happened? Ticket prices would just be astronomical. Not that they're cheap, but
They're astronomical now.
they would go even higher.
We just bought tickets to see Lady Antebellum at PNC. I think we got lousy seats and spent $150.
For two tickets?
Yeah, yeah, for lousy seats. So we went to Philadelphia area, the Keswick Theater, which is like it's a restored theater, like what's the one in Red Bank, Count Basie, that sort of venue. And
Right.
we we saw Transatlantic had front row seats, and I think that cost us $75. But that's not a it's a top rate quality band, but it's not top tier in terms of ticket sales.
No.
But who did we see? We spent. I think we went to see Yes last year. I think that was $200.
Wow.
Maybe more. Tickets for anything are expensive. Go to a ball game.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to go see the symphony. Um, and I took one look at the price. I'm like, is it really worth it? I don't know.
What does the
Not not
symphony charge?
not for Mahler's first. That is. Uh,
I, I love
um,
Mahler, but you should pay me because it takes so
no,
much effort to listen to.
that's not my favorite. Although, my friend John said to listen to it again. That he loved it, but I don't know, the Titan Symphony. I you know I think they could have picked something better. They have a symphony by Bernstein too.
Really?
Yeah, his second.
Nice.
That's the same night. They're doing that music, that audience participation thing, where
What is
at
that?
the end, if you play an orchestral instrument, you can um, you can play along with the members of the orchestra.
No.
Yeah,
That's too cool.
yeah, they picked Farandole, which I played in high school. So I downloaded it again. I got my viola out of mothballs. All the hair had come off of my bow,
Yeah.
so I'd have to buy a new bow. But I pizzicatoed my way through it,
Hmm.
and it kind of all came back to me. I hadn't played it since college, the viola. I haven't picked it up in a long time.
It's interesting that you said that. About 2 weeks ago, I went into the attic and drug out my trumpets, which I
Oh,
have not touched since 1972.
and could did you get a note out of them?
Yeah, I could play in the from low C. which would be B flat, concert B flat, middle C to C. C is at 5. Middle C is C4.
Yeah.
Is that right? So
Hmm.
C4 to C5.
It's pretty good for
Well, for 50 years,
for an untried lip.
45 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's the only reason why I could even get a note out of the viola was that I've been playing string instruments all these years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing about strings as opposed to brass or woodwinds. Uh, you're using your fingers and touch, not your lips and tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is not. It's not. What's the word? It wouldn't be it wouldn't be second nature to everybody to use those as their primary interface.
Yeah. No. The wind instruments were never for me.
Yeah.
I had a girlfriend at Northeastern who just as I was leaving for the summer, she started playing the oboe, and she could make she could get notes out of it. She could do some scales by the time I left, but no, that was never
Yeah.
my wish. No, I'm strictly a strings and keys guy.
Yeah.
Not that I could do woodwinds or brass, today or anything, after a certain point, especially, But you know what they say that people who play instruments are more intelligent than people who don't. There's been a study.
Has there?
Oh yeah,
Oh, interesting.
I can't quote the particulars, but that's what I heard. I
That'd
have
be a
to,
fun study to do.
I have to say that I agree.
Yeah.
It's probably true.
A lot of the most intelligent people we know of were musicians. Uh, Not primarily, but certainly amateur musicians. And but then again, that might be a little skewed too, because in the early days of the development of science, the scientific method, and the people tended to be an educated person tended to be what was it called, a classical education. Could read and write in Latin, play
Right,
some music, do a variety of things. The Renaissance man, I think, is a term applied to that.
right.
But we've lost the age of the Renaissance man and come to the age of the specialized man. So, which I think something's
So
lost where that's concerned. But to drive knowledge forward, that's what we've come to. No person can have as broad a range of knowledge and awareness of the universe because the universe is so big. We've discovered how big it is in some ways. So, yeah, you've got to go to a specialist.
yeah, yeah. Like I said before, everybody has to find that thing, and if they don't, they regret it. And if that thing is, playing an instrument or singing or whatever it is, you know, it's definitely,
Yeah.
more conducive to a well-rounded human being, even at that level.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Whatever your field of endeavor is, you need to experience success, and if you don't, life is miserable. Life is
Which,
miserable.
which brings me back to my original contention that certain things just sound good to humans, and I think that was very helpful in the beginning in developing music and uh, and the instruments that we use to play it.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
just find
absolutely.
certain sounds pleasant, chord progressions, instruments,
So
intervals.
what, so what about Schoenberg then, who set out to change that and make all notes
Hmm.
equal?
Okay. All right. That's that's probably. I was going to say the exception that proves the rule, but I don't think it's an exception at all because I don't particularly dig Schoenberg.
Right. I don't think it worked. That's my short answer. He
Yeah,
tried, and I can understand his trying, but I don't think it worked.
I don't think it worked either.
I learned that system, and I learned how to imp, implement that system to some minor effect, um, but it wasn't fulfilling. Just wasn't fulfilling. It was interesting. I made some interesting music, but I didn't make any good music. That's why I abandoned it. Penderecki, wasn't he the guy who was the mathematician? Was that the mathematician who tried to
Yes.
keep perfect music through math?
Yeah.
Again, it's interesting, but who wants to listen to it? I once heard an album. This was semi-popular when I was in college, called "The Earth's Magnetic Fields." They had been studying the Earth's magnetic fields and had a lot of data. And some guy says, "Let's assign these data values to sonic values and see what it would sound like." That's interesting for about 30 seconds. It went on for about 40 minutes, but
Yeah.
that's why I essentially stopped doing electronic music. I would like to rediscover. I have some nice synthesizer. I have a nice hybrid modular synthesizer that I never use. I use it for. I use it to play the Wakeman sound, you know, the Wakeman patch, and Target, Tarkus, the Tarkus bass patch. But other than that, I don't use it because I understand that music. I did a lot of it all those years ago, but it didn't move me. It was interesting, but it didn't move me. And now I would kind of like to integrate some of that, but I still don't know what elements of that to take and use creatively and compellingly. How
Yeah.
is that going to compel? How is that going to propel my music forward and compel the listener to go, ah, that's satisfying?
The short answer is it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And I think the further you go away from, your regular progressions, your you want to leap outside the box. You can only go so far before you have to reel yourself back in and realize there's just some things that, the audience at large just won't tolerate.
I think the perfect example is Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Keith Emerson was the first to use the Moog in that setting. He really had a sense of it, made it melodic, beautiful, rhythmic, and compelling, and didn't use too much of it.
Right. He had a lot of them, but he wasn't up there doing 12-tone pieces.
Right, right. And his big Moog, I knew this at the time, but there's no information available at the time um, about his Moog system that I could find. But I knew he had to have a what's the word? A switching system. So he would have individual patches already set up that he would just push a button and switch patches, because there's no way you could use that as a performance instrument otherwise.
Well, I think that's why he had so many, because they're really back when they first were doing large tours, there was no switching system, and there was no way to switch patches.
That's
So
right.
he had like one keyboard for each instrument he wanted to play,
Hmm.
and he could manipulate the filters somewhat, but being there being no real switching system to govern the sounds that he wanted to make and change them the way he wanted to make them. I believe that's one of the reasons why he had to have so many synthesizers.
Right. Well, Bob Moog jumped in and hand built himself those switches for him, those patch switching system. And
Necessity, the mother of
yeah,
invention.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as synthesizers developed into what they are today, how many people actually make a new patch? I've done a few, but
I, you know what? It's not worth it. It's
right,
just not worth it, because you have sampling and you have pre-made patches. And if there isn't a sound that exists, I mean, if you're going to use, either FM synthesis or, um, a modulator synthesis, and make a sound that way and not use sample, is my point. Uh, if there isn't something out there that already exists, you're you're gonna have a hard time either bending the system to your will, or uh, you're going to spend like an hour manipulating the different modulators and filters, etc., to come up with a sound that probably exists if you look hard enough.
yeah,
And
I have 2,300 presets on one of my keyboards, and I have 3 keyboards.
that's an amazing amount.
Yeah.
But that's too many.
Well, I've never come anywhere close to
Wow.
seeing them all, trying them all. I have no
It
clue
would
what's in there.
it would take you days to try them all.
Well, but a lot of days with a lot of time dedicated.
Right, right. So you
But then,
can.
go ahead.
Uh, I was just going to say you can knock your um, patch creation down to a very simple level, because basic synthesis has really, I mean, over time it's developed into lots of parts, but you've got your oscillator, your filter, and your amplifier, and that's basically it. You can put a few oscillators together. I find once you get beyond 3 VCOs, that the sound gets muddy,
Right, exactly, exactly.
and then you've got your ADSR, which I mean, that's the first thing they teach you in electronic music is mute. The most simple electronic music doesn't even need a synthesizer. Music concrete is based off of that fact.
Right, right. The ADSR, by the way, is the first thing you don't use. It's a wonderful tool, but if you just dive in and turn those buttons, you're going to get the same old stuff that's been going on for 50 years, and that's not new and exciting anymore.
Right.
So here's a question for you. Um, if I use a preset on my synthesizer, my keyboard, that I really like, and that's mostly what you hear. I might play something over it or add something to it. Is that an original composition?
You mean if you create the preset yourself?
No. If I use a preset,
Oh, okay. You use a preset that's already been made,
yeah.
that already exists, rather.
Let me let me try something here. I'm going to just see if I can play a segment of what I mean. So if I get cut off, I'll jump right back in. See if this works.
Well, while you're doing that, I'd say the short answer is yeah, as long as it's an original composition. If you use a patch that already exists, as long as you write the piece, I don't see why not.
I hope this works. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you, yeah.
Good. Okay, try this. That looks like that should work. Try this.
What's he doing?
I'm trying to bring up just such a piece to play for you.
Yeah, be
Here it
interesting to
is. See if
see if I
I
can
hope you
hear
can
it.
hear this. We'll try this.
Okay. Nothing so far.
Almost ready. Okay, here we go. Nothing?
No,
There we go.
no, I can't hear it.
Nothing?
No. By the way, if anybody watching wants to chat with us, I have the chat box open, or I guess I'll check the Google Plus page from time to time, see if there's a comment. Nothing right now.
I can hear this. Why can't you?
No, I can't hear it. It's probably not too good to try and figure out the bugs. You know what? Let me see if you can hear me. That might point us in the right direction. I'm gonna play something, and there it's that progression that you gave me last
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
See if you can hear this. It's me playing the progression. Yes?
No, I can't hear it.
Yeah. I don't think we can play things over the air, as it were.
Hmm.
If if there is a way to do it, I don't see it. I just played the piece. You couldn't hear anything?
No, I couldn't hear anything.
Mm. All right. So just doing it via the media player doesn't work. What about a synthesizer? No. You didn't hear that either?
No, I didn't hear anything.
Mm. All right. We'll have to figure that out. We'll have to figure out how to do that if we want to actually do that. The only other thing I can think of is making, bringing up the desktop and doing it that way. I know there's a way to switch over screen share. Yeah. Try this. Could you could you hear that with my screen up? Where'd he go? I lost him. Huh. Oh well. Hmm. I don't think it's through anything through any fault of mine. That kind of sucks because what I did was on the piano I recorded a bunch of songs that have a bunch of really cool chord progressions. I know none of you can read this, but because this is actually the way that I write most often. It's kind of funny. I'll take a piece of paper, just write the chords, and it may look like gibberish to you, but I can actually read this, believe it or not.
Am I back?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to get some audio in, but I couldn't.
Uh, I'm gonna try and move the screen over to the player. So see if you can
Okay,
hear this. See if you can hear this. Okay.
very good.
Uh,
Oh, that's interesting. What am I seeing? Now playing. Oh, did you? Song progression is written. Can you hear me?
yeah.
I'm looking at something on your computer.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, so you wanted to see if by putting it on that way I would get audio.
Yeah. Did you hear it?
No, I didn't hear any audio.
Damn. Yeah. I switched the screen over to the media player.
Right, that would make sense.
Yeah, but I don't know why it wouldn't uh, it wouldn't play audio. It's kind of strange. Kind of unfortunate too.
Yeah.
Yeah, try. Let me try this just real quick. Present to everyone. Okay.
Oh,
Uh,
ARP 2600.
yeah. See if you can.
Arturia? I actually had one of those.
But you can't hear it.
No, I can't hear any sound.
Hmm. Strange. I don't know how we get around that. I'll look it up later. Maybe there's a way to do it.
Yeah, hopefully.
I was watching. There was a kid broadcasting last night on a Hangout, and I say broadcasting because he was doing kind of a mock radio station. I think what he was doing was putting his speakers up to a microphone and doing it that way, which is kind of ridiculous. You know, there's got to be a way to do it over the computer, but I can't see. I can't hear you, you know. No. Did you mute your microphone? I think you muted your microphone. I saw the mute. Yeah. Oh, it's off, but I still can't hear you. Now I can't see him either. Oh well. We'll do this and we'll do this again when we worked out all the bugs. There's bugs in any system. It's like composing a piece of music. You know, you wanna. No, I still can't hear you. No, I can see you now. I see you, but I can't hear you. All right, we're gonna probably have to shut it off. Well, uh, is there any way we can edit this down? Because we had some good stuff early on that I'd like to save. That's another thing I'll have to find out if there's any way I can edit this, probably through the YouTube video editor. I'll just chop off this end part and keep the first part as part of the hangout if we want to keep any of it. Because I told my Beatles Twickenham story, and that was interesting. I think I can't hear or see him now, so this is kind of ridiculous. Me just sitting here talking to my computer screen, although I must admit I do it all the time. What? What is that? I see you again, but I can't hear you. I can't hear him, folks. We somehow this was botched. This is completely botched up, and I'm afraid it no longer works. I see him talking, but I can't hear him. Cut. Stop. Stop. Stop broadcasting. All right.